Welcome to the VTLA School Division Budgeting 101. Our VTLA sponsors are ALP and Participate Learning. Our presenters are Tom Smith with VASS, and he's our VASS Legislative Liaison. Chip Jones, Cumberland Superintendent, and Michelle Mitchell, Newport News Superintendent. So now I'm just going to turn it over to Dr. Smith.
Good morning. It's good to have you with us. Good to be here. Some background. I'm Tom Smith. I have been the legislative liaison for 14 years with VASS. Before that, I was superintendent in Fluvanna County and have done school budgets for probably since the Stone Age, when we didn't have a calculator. We had to figure it ourselves. But today, what I'm going to do, let me see if I can share my screen and walk you through the state budget process. First off, and I'm going to say this now, and I'm going to say it at the end, and you'll understand once I get through it. We have a budget now. We're in the second year of the biennium budget. Virginia budgets in 2 years spans. Last year was the first year, and then they set it for the second year. What will happen now is that if they want to make any changes, they will amend the current budget, towards the when they get out of the General Assembly and meeting with the governor. Currently, this year, and they do this particularly in the beginning of the biennium, state agencies have made requests to the governor's office. They've looked at their needs. The department has done what we call re-benchmarking, which is setting what costs should be, SOU costs for that part of the process for the 2 years. And in fact, this year, they will begin looking at the next biennium in terms of re-benchmarking. And so that process will begin next spring, and then we'll have more information in the fall for the next biennium budget. All of that information goes to the Department of Planning and Budget. They analyze it. They're putting costs together with needs. And so they talk to the governor's office. And this is the process when the governor begins to put forth his or her budget. And you have to remember, as I said, we have a budget. So when we hear from the governor in 2 weeks, it will be how he wants to amend the current budget that's set. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that as we go through, because 2 years ago, they didn't finalize a state budget. I don't know, Chip may remember, or Michelle, until the fall. And so everybody was holding their breath, but we had a budget. They did not feel any need to move forward. There are a lot of disagreements, and so they didn't solve it. In the first year when it's the first year, they have to come to a budget by July 1, or there is no state budget. And we have never had that, but it is something that is possible. It gets down to can be 11:59 on June 30 some years before they do anything. They finish. But this budget that we're in now is what's called the governor's legacy budget. And that's because this is the only budget in which the governor has had full, not control, but full input on, without any other governor. When Governor Youngkin came in, Governor Northam had already submitted a budget. And now he changed it, but they had already submitted it. And when Governor Youngkin goes out, then whoever is governor next year will have input on that budget. So this is the only one. This is what the legacy is, and why sometimes governors get really sticky in terms of whether they want to change any of their recommendations. Once the governor submitted his budget, and that will be, like I said, we have it in 2 weeks. It'll go to the General Assembly as a bill. There'll be a House version of that bill, and there'll be a Senate version of that bill. The General Assembly is very sensitive in terms of what is considered the budget, because they say often the governor proposes and the General Assembly disposes. They're the ones that can have the ability to authorize expenditures, and they take that very seriously. In the House, it will go to House Appropriations, and in the Senate, it'll go to Senate Finance and Appropriations. There is also a process in which individual members can submit amendments, and these are handled in the committee. Some are accepted, some are not, but they'll be, many of the delegates or senators will put in a budget amendment based on what they feel is necessary and what their community might want. After all that's happened, then and the Appropriation or Finance Committee approves a budget, it'll go to the floor of the General Assembly and they'll vote on it. They'll vote on each item of it. And sometimes it goes quickly and sometimes it can take days. And so once the House approves its budget, they'll send it to the Senate. And once the Senate approves their budget, they'll send it to the House. It's called crossover. Now, usually they reject each other's budgets, and then this comes to they go to a conference committee to try to work out the differences. This happens usually in the last week or two of the session, and so, but they're trying to rectify the differences. Before that, in your budget planning, unfortunately, in the first year, you're dealing with three budgets. You're dealing with the governor's budget, you're dealing with the Senate's budget, and you're dealing with the House's budget. And trying to predict as you go through your budget process when we get into January and February, where it's going to land. At VASS, we try to help you with information. The department often puts out information as a calculator to let you know what it is, but you're dealing with three budgets. But again, now you have a budget to begin the process. It's just whatever amendments are going to happen. I'm going to be very honest. I said yesterday at the Region 2 meeting that I'm a little concerned because politics become intertwined in things now. And if the governor has one idea and the House and the Senate have another idea, it may take them a while to rectify what they're going to do. Once the governor, they pass the General Assembly passes a bill, and then the governor, it goes to the governor's office, and he can sign it. He can veto the entire bill, or he can change certain items, or he can recommend amendments. I don't believe there's many times in which they vetoed the entire bill, but he often does come back with line item changes or recommended amendments, and this can be whether they're wording, amounts, whatever. If he recommends amendments, then the bill is returned to the reconvened session for consideration and action. And that's when it's in April, and it is what we call the veto session. It is when the governor's actions on all the bills that were handled in the General Assembly and the budget are handled. And it's usually one day, although it can be more than one day, but it's usually one day. Now, the budget, when it's passed by the General Assembly, it's enacted into law on July 1. I mentioned that. That's the first year. In the odd years, it's enacted because, remember, they're just amendments to the existing budget. It's enacted on the day it's passed. So we'll have some changes that will be more recent or more come sooner than we would have in terms of July 1. Now, they may, in passing the budget, say this is going to take effect on July 1. And so because they wait to see where it's at. Now, We also have, often you'll see language items in the budget. It will not have an amount to it. It will have just language about certain things. And they do that often because budget language can override the code. So if a bill has been passed that would go into the code and the General Assembly, some people in the General Assembly didn't like it as much, then they'll put budget language in there that might negate it. But we've got to remember also that that budget language only lasts for the life of the budget. So it's only for 2 years. And so if it did change things, that change is only for 2 years. I'm going to show you, these are items from the General Assembly website, and I'm going to, if I can get it here. I'm going to stop sharing and show you the General Assembly website, if I can get this, to show you how you can follow things also. This is the General Assembly's website, and I put and you just go to the General Assembly, it'll click up, and you'll see all of these items here, and there is one for state budget. And so this will take you to a description of the budget process that I reviewed you. It'll take you to the committee links for the House Appropriations and Senate Finance. Here, it will give you the Department of Planning and Budget if you have information on that, and it will take you to the website, if I can get it here, that has the state budget bills on it. And so you will see that it'll have the amendments and it'll have committee reports. This is often useful as you're following what's going on with the budget to keep abreast of it. I'm going to hand it off to, unless you have any questions. I apologize. I've got a dog that's barking in the background. You're probably hearing Mimi, but I apologize for that. But any questions on that? That was really quick, I understand.
Tom, I do see a question in the chat. So Wayne, do you want to unmute and ask that question?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. So for initial local budgeting purposes, again, I know, sometimes we have to wait till they land on a final version of the state budget but for initial local planning purposes, is it always usually the best practice to go with the most conservative version of the three budgets until we end up with a final version?
Yeah, I think it is. I don't know how Chip and Michelle feel, but I tended to do that because you can always go up. It's hard to, to come down. Usually the governor's budget is somewhere in the middle. The House and Senate, usually my experience was the Senate's more adventurous than the House. And so you just sort of have to play it by ear a little bit. But often people will start with the governor's budget and then move. I used to tell my boards that it's a moving target. And so we're just trying, you'll see some commonality, but we're just trying to find out where that target's going to be, but it will be a moving target.
All right. Thank you so much.
Wayne, on that, just to go off what Tom said, I usually go with the governor's budget. That's what I build their budget on. I look at the House and I look at the Senate budget and I do a comparison with the three budgets and different things, just so I can inform the board and different things, and just to see that is one calling for a salary increase, is one not, and when is the salary increase, and different things like that. And does one have some certain one-time funding for which year and so forth, just to kind of get that. But the numbers that I use when I talk about the budget, I always use the governor's budget that comes out or gets revised in December.
Gotcha.
And I do the same.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
One of the other things you'll see is that they'll pass a budget in the first year, and if there's some big ticket items, they might put those in the second year and say in there if revenue is available. So, we know where we are now. There's a lot of money out there. But so the things that they did from last year, but you'll also see that in terms of trying to gear where you're going to go with it. And I'll hand it off to Chip.
Thanks, Tom. Good morning, everyone. I'm Chip Jones. I am the superintendent for Cumberland County Public Schools. I've been in this role for the division since July of 2020, right at the beginning of COVID, at the start or so forth. Prior to that, I was the assistant superintendent here, director, principal, assistant principal, and so forth. So just kind of, I've been here, worked up, and so forth. Amy Griffin, actually, who you all know, was the superintendent. So in the roles that she was in Cumberland, I was always her assistant and so forth. So congratulations to each of you. You'll get out of it what you put into it. So, you know, that's a good way to look at it and so forth. Some days are great, some days are not so great and so forth. So shout out to Sherry McGill. She was one of my led the program when I got my doctorate. So it's always good to see her through VCU. All right. So Cindy's going to help me share because I was having some little difficulties here and I just feel safer as she's doing it. So, all right.
It's up. Do you see it?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So right here, just a little budgeting VAST, December 5th, today and so forth. Just to give you a little background, I did not have a finance background when I got moved into, came to central office to do finance and so forth. I was an elementary school principal one day, and then the next day I was the finance director for Cumberland County Public Schools, which entailed a lot of things. Just, you know, sometimes life works that way and so forth. So, you know, kind of learn by immersion. You get thrown in and you network and you learn and you do and so forth. And I will say this, one of the best things about budgeting and so forth, if you have questions, is to network and work with your fellow superintendents or your finance person or people you know. That's how you learn the most in VAS and DOE, just learning and asking questions. Okay. Next, Cindy. So I just wanted to give you some information about the budget process, the calendar, and the documents. The first link that Cindy's going to come up is the Cumberland County Public Schools budget calendar. I'm sure you've done yours for your division, or if you're new to your division, it was done. If it's for some reason it's not, maybe something you want to look at and so forth. But what this is, and you'll see there's nothing fancy, not a fancy person, just put the facts out there and so forth, the budget calendar, and it breaks down by month of the different things that need to take place during the budget calendar. And really, and so forth, I make myself calendar invites on a Google Calendar. I present this to the board. I share it with the county administrator for Cumberland County just to give air highlights. And I always let people know that some of these dates in here are fluid. They do change. October, as you can see in 24, principals and central office administration submit a budget request to me, or they give their input and so forth. We start talking about capital improvement needs and so forth. And then in November, we just finished November, the people, the departments and the principals present a preliminary budget and request to me. And then we've worked through, and the school board has work through the capital improvement process, and we submit that information to the county. Actually, tonight, our board meeting is on the first Thursday of the month. They will receive public input about the upcoming budget process. What does the public want to see in regards to the budget in Cumberland County Public Schools? And then you'll see in January, we start drafting, and then they have a work session. February, I will present a budget. February 20th, we do a public hearing, and then there's a joint meeting between the locality and the school board. And then you can see, Cindy, if you'll scroll down a little bit, just gives that process. And that just, you know, as I said, I just make things work for me. I do calendar invites. I keep this printed off just to make sure it kind of keeps me on track. And what you can see is budgeting is a year-round process. There's a little downtime with it and so forth, but each day you're probably talking about money with someone. So just wanted you to know. All right, Cindy, you can go to the next link. Wanted to put this in We just updated, we update our strategic plan every year, comprehensive plan, strategic plan, whatever you may want to call it. And this is the one for our division. And this is the guiding document that helps guide what we do for our budget. You know, and there are certain priorities and initiatives that we may want to, that we're working on for the division. And it's kind of like a working document. I keep a copy of this printed as well. I keep it downloaded on my computer, and I always refer to it. Is what we're doing align with their strategic plan? If we're doing something that's not there, maybe we need to revise their strategic plan. And then if we've done something and we've accomplished it, it may come off when we do something. The Cumberland County School Board, I can't say enough about them. They're very supportive, and they're always putting students and staff first. So with that, you know, we talk about students, we talk about this, we talk about that. But one of the things that when we went back and revised it, one of the parts that I thought was missing or wasn't emphasized enough is about the professional learning of our staff, and just making sure we have to have good people in front of the kids on a daily basis, providing the instruction, just making sure we emphasize that and so forth. Cindy, if you'll just scroll through that a little bit, what you can see, it just gives an overview, and it gives the stop right there, the profile of their graduate. You know, when somebody walks across the stage or graduates from Cumberland County Public Schools, this is what they're proficient in. It's the 5 C's. So we keep that, and it talks about the profile of Virginia graduate. Cindy, if you go down just a little bit more, gives the expectation, the school board goals, and as you can see, our school board wanted, they wanted goals, they wanted 4 goals that are pretty open and will encompass all the work that we're doing. So they don't want it, which I appreciate. And then it just kind of breaks down the strategic goals. If you go down just a little bit more, engage every student. I mean, you can see that. So it's pretty self-explanatory, and it just walks you through. And then Cindy, go down just a little bit more. Go down, keep going. I'll tell you when to stop. So go, all right, we can stop right here. Priority 2, right there. Create a school culture that focuses on equity, inclusive practices so that all students pre-K through 12 have access to learning and opportunities. And what it does is we give some rationale and then our action steps and so forth. And I use that as a checklist. I go through that. Are we aligning to what we're saying we're doing? If we're not, why? Is it something that's just, it's not relevant to Cumberland County Public Schools anymore, or is it something that's kind of gotten lost to the wayside and we need to revisit? So it's your working document that helps guide all you do until you request funding and so forth. All right. The next one, that is not going to come up. There was something wrong with the link on that, Cindy, so I'm sorry. But your capital improvement budget, your plan, that is key. And I will say I'm a small rural division. So my capital improvement, and that may be some of you all as well, I rely on the locality. And I can do this beautiful plan all I want. I can get everything I want. But at the end of the day, if the locality doesn't fund it, it's not going to happen. And they're not going to raise taxes. So if the money's not there, odds are it's not going to be done. We were able to do a lot of capital improvement with the CARES funding and the state construction funds. We did a lot. And the last 3 or 4 years, there were more capital improvement going on in Cumberland County Public Schools probably than there had been in 20 years. Because we had access to funds, it was no cost to the local taxpayer and so forth. We submit a plan, and at the end of the day, and to be fully transparent, it's whether the our Board of Supervisors funds it or not. Or if we happen to have some turn back money at the end of the year that maybe could go to this, then they may do it and so forth. But it's good to have to get public input and so forth. And there's probably a school division, probably Michelle, probably has a more detailed plan than I do. And I apologize if I'm sorry about that link, but that is a crucial part because you have to plan the needs of your school division. And in Cumberland, we refer to the new school. We have a new middle high school complex. It's still called the new complex, but keep in mind it was built in 2009, and people still call it that new complex. Well, that new complex each day is getting older. HVAC's getting older. Roof's getting older. Paint's need a little updating and so forth. People still call it new because they're still paying debt on it. However, at the end of the day, it's getting a little age and so forth. So, you know, but it's budget presentation. If you'll go to that, this right here, this was from last February, the Cumberland County Public Schools School Board and Board of Supers workshop. So with that, if there's a workshop, and this is just the CHIP method, and I'm not saying it works for everyone, you have to tell your story of the story of Cumberland County Public Schools, not the story that people hear, but the story that's actually taken place. And you know that, and you work through your people and so forth. There are a lot of good things that happen in schools on a daily basis that doesn't always get reported. It might get reported on social media that all this, whatever, or in your local paper, usually not the real story in a lot of cases. You have to tell your story. This presentation, just talk about, there's your school board over there, the school board goals, because I think it's important that everyone knows that, and that this is the goals that the school board are working through and so forth, and then going from there. Proposed 24-25 funding. As you can see, we're a small rural school division, okay? So I put in the state funds. I want everyone to know what are state funding. Local funding, what that is, and this is important. That is the local funding so we can access all of our state funds. There's a required local effort, there's a required local match, and you know, and so forth, and there's a difference there. You want to be able to access all of your state funds, and in order for you to do that, they need to give you their local match that's at the end of that spreadsheet or the calc tool. Federal funding, what we get in federal funding, and then other funds, receipt books. That may be checks that you receive and different things that you haven't put in your budget that you have to go for an appropriation and so forth. Sometimes if you give an estimate of, you know, an average of the last 5 years, how much you've brought in a receipt book, you can build that in your budget. It may go up, it may go down. If it goes above what you've requested, then of course you have to do appropriation for that. And then I give a total. And then I just specified at the end, in order to access all available state funds, the locality would provide the local required match of. The required local effort is, which would not allow us to utilize all of our state funds. I wanted everyone to know that in order for me to get my state funds, I need the locality to give this. If you don't, I'm going to get that. And that's about $1 million that I'm leaving on the table. That is a true impact for a small rural division, which is people. That is mainly, and so forth. All right. Maximizing grant funding at no cost to locality. I just went over, people love a beautiful facility. They love a beautiful facility if it doesn't come with a price tag to a locality. And different things, just kind of put what all we had done. And then the composite index, that is, especially when the new biennium, air composite index for Cumberland changed. And what that does, and I know you know this, is the composite index drives how much the locality gives to a school division. I don't want to say gives, but their required match and so forth. Ours changed from, and they talk about base years. The 22-24 school year was based on a 2019 base year. The 24-26 is based on a 2021 base year. And what that does is it talks about the true value of property, the adjusted gross income, and the taxable retail sales. I gave what the current composite index was. I gave what the next composite index was going to be, and then I gave the changes. True value of property, there was an increase. Adjusted gross income, there was an increase. Taxable retail sales, there was an increase. I wanted everyone to know that these aren't Chip Jones numbers that I put in to come up with on my ride to work one day. These came from the locale, these came from the state. All right. And then the budget goals, pretty simple. As I told you, there's nothing fancy about me. I wanted to maintain the people we had. I wanted to access all of my state funding. I wanted to have affordable benefits for all staff and continue to offer comprehensive education. That's what I wanted. You let me do that. You allow me the resources to do that. I'm good. And then just gave a breakdown of who we employ. And over half of these staff members and team members are Cumberland County residents. So I just gave down, who are we employing? So I give that. Nothing fancy, just broke it down and so forth. And then budget considerations, what goes into the budget, and so forth. You always look at your enrollment. I would need to recruit at the time, the Virginia Literacy Act, professional learning, course offering, facilities, extracurriculars, graduation requirements, because you know these requirements keep changing as we've seen. Career development, chronic absenteeism, special education services, supports, and utilities. We have to consider all of these things as we're building the budget. I call it a big mixing bowl. We dump it all in and we hope we get a beautiful, great product at the end. And then the next one, projected enrollment, gave the VDOE a projection, gave the budgeted amount, what we're doing and so forth. And just gave a breakdown of how we're spending the money. Instruction, pupil transportation, operations and maintenance, and technology. I give that information as well, just so everyone sees. Budget considerations, what I may be adding to the budget. At the time, it was an additional special education position to give the 1% bonus to staff. There was a local match to that. Reviewing all online resources and outside consultants. Do we have enough what outside resources are we using? And as you hear sometimes, is the juice worth the squeeze, or is it we're getting the bang for our buck, or so forth? Considering the revision of the high school schedule to allow teachers to teach more classes. This year we went from a 7-period day to a block schedule and so forth. Exploring CTE options for students. And then we were sending students to Code RVA in downtown Richmond. It's about an hour and 10-minute commute for them. So we reduced their number of slots for that. This right here, I'm sure you all have been to it, the VDOE budgets and grants page. I would bookmark that page. And if you go right there to your direct aid payments and calculation templates, if you could select that. And you go, and this right here, if you look at the 24-26 biennium, and you look at your most recent document. So could you, on the tool data, Cindy, would you select calculation template? Thank you. All right, and if you go, and this gives the most recent date. If you go down to the bottom, click here to continue.
Oh, you have to download that macros. You have to enable your macros.
Well, anyway, with that, you're good. So if you click on that, it
Mhm.
gives you the choice to choose your school division. Okay. And you select that. Once you do that, your school division will come up. And VDOE does a projected enrollment for your division. If you know it's either less than that or more than that, it gives you the option to change that on your enrollment projections and so forth. Pretty straightforward, and just work through that. And the simple way that I do that, and I know it's different for divisions, we use PowerSchool, their student management information system. And I look at that kind of like people probably look at the stock market. And I do a old school, we use a piece of paper and so forth. I look at the enrollment per grade level and different things, and then I get enrollment projections. I factor out students that may be in outside placements that we may not get state funding for, factor all that out, do an average over the last 5 years of our kindergarten enrollment, do that and so forth, and just factor out any pre-K kids that we may not get funding for and so forth, just to make that work. And, you know, just to gauge and so forth. Fortunately, right now, Cumberland County Public Schools, we're above their projected enrollment, which is good. But that could change because we have it's getting near tax time, it's getting near holidays, it's getting near this and so forth, and there people move. And so in Cumberland today, Prince Edward tomorrow, Amelia tomorrow, Buckingham, wherever. And then, you know, they may not be here March 31st when we get that final, your data for the year, but they may come back April 2nd, but, you know, doesn't help your funding. All right, I'm done with that part. If you can go to the next link. The next one is your LCI. I went over that a little bit. If you could select, if you could select that. That right there just gave that memo last year from Dr. Coons. And if you can find that memo and you go to the Composite Index website, that will walk you through the composite index for your locality. If it goes up, if it goes down, people will want you to explain that, and you just go by the numbers, okay? And it just gives the ability to pay and the trend analysis and so forth. Take a little time to review that, just so you can understand what's going on in your locality. And because what I had to explain is we're a small rural school division without a lot of business, but yet our composite index increased. So, and I know Kent Dickey at the time got tired of me because I would call him and say, listen, Kent, we got to talk about this. I don't know, he didn't have a lot to do with it either, but I had to, I had to get my bases and so forth. All right, Cindy, I'm done with that part. And then the next one, go down to budget document. That should open, I hope.
There it goes.
This right here, this was from the 23-24 school year. This is the budget document that I produce every year. I always put pictures of our staff and kids because that's what we're about. And pictures tell a lot of stories and so forth. If you just scroll a little bit through there, I give the goals, I give the projected enrollment and so forth. Keep going just a little bit. I talk about our school board, the central office staff and so forth. As you can see, we don't have many. And the acknowledgement, keep going, just scroll a little bit. Just to put our school board goals, the revenue and expenditures, I give the previous year, the current year, and if we had to amend and so forth. Scroll just a little bit more, Cindy. And just state revenue, give the state revenue sheet that comes from that template and so forth. Keep going just a little bit. And just give a breakdown of where the state funds and so forth. So federal funds and other funds and so forth. And just, make it tell the story of all that we're doing in Cumberland County Public Schools. And I'm through with that part, Cindy. We're a farming community. So next. And then the next part is just my final thoughts. Budgeting, as I said, it's ongoing. This year, December 18th is the magic day that the spreadsheets get updated from what we hear. So you bookmark that finance page, look at it, get you in the holiday spirit. So you get ready to leave for winter break or whatever you may be doing, and you think holiday time and you think budget time. Always look at your enrollment, especially if you're a division where it fluctuated. You really count on that. The composite index, your funding sources, your state, local, and any grants that you may have. Federal reimbursements. This is crucial. You need to make sure that your finance people and all your federal programs people talk and communicate. Because the way federal funding works is you put the money out, you spend the money, and you have to redo reimbursements to get it back in. And if you don't get your reimbursements back in, you have obligated local, state funds, whatever funds you may use. And what you thought you were going to be using for something, you're not because you haven't done a reimbursement. So it's crucial no matter how big or small your division may be, this is crucial. In Cumberland at the time, the finance person was me, the federal programs person was me, so I got to meet with me just to make sure we were doing that and so forth. Benefits, always looking at what's the cost of health insurance. If you work with a consultant, what is the increase going to be? We meet with their consultant 5 times a year because I need a projection. You're always good, though, to budget about a 10% increase. If it happens, you got it. If it doesn't, you have a little money to play with. Operations, what's it cost to operate your facilities? Do you have a chiller going out? Do you have a boiler going out? Do you have this? Do you have that? And so forth. Human resources, the people. If you want, you got to pay and different things, and just looking at what positions do you need, what positions can you reallocate, who's retiring and so forth. Conversations, crucial with your governing body and your school board and so forth. and just, you know, always telling the story and so forth. One of the things that I do, and it helps with budgeting, I give a presentation at every Cumberland County Board of Supervisors meeting. I give an update on the schools. And each week, our Board of Supervisors hears from me. They get a highlights from Cumberland County Public Schools. I send it to the district, I send it to the school board, and I send it to the Board of Supervisors. It's a lot of time, it's a lot of effort, but it's a PR and so forth, so we see what's going on and so forth. And then the strategic plan, the guiding document. So that's what I have. It's a lot. And it's probably not the best way. It's not a fancy way. It's just the way I make it work.
Hey, Chip, may I ask a question? Herb
Sure.
Monroe from Surrey County.
Yes, sir.
Great morning, everyone. In Surrey, we are a very, very small school division, as you know, but our LCI is 0.80. And that's very challenging here for us. But that's due strictly to the Dominion power plant. Yeah, exactly. My question is, are there any grants for very small school divisions who have such a high LCI? Because I heard there was a grant out there, but I just didn't know the name of it, or, you know, where I could go to find more information out about it.
I don't know. If you find that grant, let me know. I don't know. No, it's
I heard that Bath County has some kind of grant, but I need to reach out to Bath.
maybe there can be certain situations, just depending on your locality. There may be some access to funding that not everybody has access to, and so forth. But that is challenging. And what your LCI, like we're a 0.33. So what that means is, y'all know this, about 0.33% of our funding comes from the locality. The rest comes from the state, and so forth. I don't think that helped you, Herb, but
It's okay. I'm just putting it out there because, you know, there's one kind of
I'll
perception
ask.
out there, but we don't get a lot of state money at all. I mean,
Right.
hardly any. So, you know, when we have those conversations with our Board of Supervisors, again, it goes back to that education and advocacy and awareness. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the needs are here, as
Yes,
we all
sir.
know.
All right.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Chip. And I know Dr. Mitchell has one quick thing to show, and then we should still have time to open up to some more Q&A for everybody. And in regards to Chip's presentation and also Tom's, we will share out the links as well in an email, so you guys don't have to go back and copy and paste all of that from the presentation. We'll be sure you have all those resources in an email. So, and then turn it over to Dr. Mitchell.
Well, good morning, everyone. I will just be as quick as I can out of respect for your time, but I will give you a little of my background as the other two gentlemen did. I've been with Newport News Public Schools this time around for 30 years. This is my second year as superintendent. I was supposed to retire, but then I stepped in as the interim superintendent and then decided, why shouldn't I apply? So I'm still working. So I'm in my second year. So I say congratulations to you, number one. Number two, I say to you, I survived my first year. So that should encourage you that you will survive your first year as well. I would applaud Chip. Everything Chip talked about is the process that we use here in Newport News. But I do want to share with you some of our resources, and I'll just jump to one so that we can give you time to ask questions. When you go to Newport News Public Schools main webpage, you can drop down to where it says budget. And I want to just kind of, if you look on the side at the key, we have our budget homepage. We really work hard to be transparent with our community. So there are frequently asked questions about the budget, where anyone from the community can log in, read the questions, or even ask questions. Over here to the right, you see where they can just put their name, email address, and ask questions. And within 24 hours, someone from our staff will respond to their budget questions. They come to the board meeting, obviously, to talk about, you know, what they see as priorities from the community. But for those individuals who can't come, they have the budget feedback form. We have all of our budgets archived. So if community members want to go back and look at our previous budgets and what has shifted, our priorities, et cetera, those are there. Then we have our annual comprehensive financial report that is extremely detailed. Of course, we have our per pupil expenditure. So our parents and other community business leaders have the opportunity to see what we spend per student. We have our strategic plan, as Chip talked about it, and our strategic plan, of course, is tied to our budget. When our departments come to the table to talk about what funding they feel like they need, everything has to be tied to one of the strategic initiatives in our strategic plan. But what I really want to share with you is our future facilities master plan. And again, you can find this on our website. We have very, very old schools here in Newport News. Right now, we're just a little under 26,000 students. So we're not large, we're not small, we're kind of in the middle. But we have a CIP and facilities master plan, so that any person who is looking to move here, any community member can take a look at how we fund our CIP, where it goes. And I'll just take a quick moment and select a school. I think I wanted to do one of our elementary schools. So you see it's broken into our preschools. We have 3 preschool independent centers. And then we have our elementary, middle, and our high. And so just in the interest of continuing to be transparent with our parents and community members will be able to, for example, look at Carver Elementary. It talks about the location. It tells what year it was built. So this school was built in 1953, so it is 71 years old. It tells the condition of the building, but in terms of the budget, a community member is able to go down and look at the capacity of the school, look at our enrollment trends. And then we added this piece in the last couple of years about safety and security. And so, of course, all of our goals across the state, across the country, are to improve safety and security. And so a community member would be able to look at the funding that we have used to improve safety. So we have worked on having a secure front entrance in our schools that previously, if you would come into the school, you may have to go down the hall. You know, the front office couldn't see who was coming into the building. So we've changed the front office entry for Carver. You see how much it costs. And then down here, it talks about when we made the request, what the request was for, whether it was funded or not funded, as well as a little bit more information. For example, that we had to have a 5.5% increase added to the plan to account for inflation. So this is one of the things that we are really proud of, that our community can log on at any time, take a look at any of our facilities, know where we are in terms of funding different projects that we have in our budget. And then you see it's color coded for above 50%. Yellow is 25 to 50, and then green is 0 to 25. Low cost for repairs or replacements versus renovate versus major renovations and replacements. So those are the things that are on our website, in addition to several other things. But in the interest of time, I will stop sharing and open up for opportunity for you to ask questions to any of the 3 of us.
Thanks. There's a question that Dr. Lyle just put in the chat. What company did you use to conduct your facility assessment?
And Dr. Lyle, I cannot believe you asked me that question, because I will tell you that I don't know. And it was one of the, I don't remember the name, but I will get that for you. So, and I'm always very transparent. I won't make up a name, but I will get that to you. And which division are you in? If I don't get it before we log off.
Prince George County.
All right.
Thank you so much.
You are quite welcome.
Are there any other questions? You can feel free to take yourself off mute or put something in the chat, and I'll be glad to read it. We can give folks a minute or 2 to think of anything. Be brave. Well, if there aren't any other questions, we can go ahead and close out and let you guys get back to business. You can email any of our presenters. We will share this recording and the resources with you in an email. Like I said, I just wanted to also thank our presenters, and again, thank ALP and Participate Learning who sponsor VTLA, and you've probably seen some of them at our in-person trainings, and they do come to our conferences and help out. So thanks for that. And then just real quick, our winter conference is coming up January 5th through 7th in Richmond. And so we do have the VTLA session there, communicating your budget. That'll be on the Monday afternoon breakout sessions. And so that'll be something that you're automatically will automatically have you in attendance there. You don't have to register or sign on or anything, but that will be in person at the Marriott downtown in Richmond. And if there's not anything else, we'll go ahead and close out. And thanks everybody for coming.